Welcome to Story Tales. Please like this video and subscribe to Story Tales. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin.
Lex Calloway dragged the industrial mop across the marble floor of Davidson and Wells law firm. The empty offices loomed around her, the darkness broken only by the occasional security light. It was almost midnight, and her shoulders ached from 5 hours of continuous cleaning. She welcomed the pain. It kept her mind occupied, kept her from thinking about her life. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. She almost ignored it, but something made her pull it out. Her sister's name flashed on the screen, Ariella, the golden child. That Lex's thumb hovered over the screen. She hadn't spoken to Ariella in months. With a sigh, she accepted the call. "Hello, Lex? It's me." Ariella's voice carried that familiar note of impatience, as if Lex was already wasting her time. "I need to talk to you about something." In the background, Lex could hear the tinkling of glasses, soft music. Another high society party, no doubt. "I'm working," Lex said, continuing to push her mop. "What is it?" "It's about the wedding," Ariella said. There was a pause, then. "I sent the invitations out yesterday." Lex stopped moving. The wedding. Ariella's engagement to Damon Harland, heir to the Harland Media Group, had been splashed across Chicago's social pages for weeks. Lex waited, knowing what was coming, but needing to hear it. "The thing is," Ariella continued, lowering her voice, "I don't think it's a good idea for you to come." Lex gripped the mop handle tighter. "And why is that?" "You know why, Lex." Ariella's tone shifted from impatience to condescension. "Damon's family, they're important people. His mother is practically Chicago royalty. And I'm just a cleaner. Is that it? Don't make this difficult." Ariella sighed. "Look, I don't want people to know you're just a janitor. Please don't come. It's for the best." Lex heard muffled voices. Then her mother's voice came through the line. "Lennox, are you giving your sister trouble?" Vivian Calloway's voice was sharp, cutting through the phone like a blade. "No, Mother," Lex said, keeping her voice even. "Ariella was just telling me I'm not welcome at her wedding." "Don't be dramatic," Vivian said. "We're simply trying to avoid an awkward situation. The Harlands move in very different circles than yours." "Than mine," Lex repeated, feeling that familiar burn in her chest. "Yes." Vivian's voice became dismissive. "Besides, we've already explained your absence to everyone. We'll just say you're dead." The words hung in the air, casual and cruel. "Mother." Ariella's shocked voice came through. "What?" "It's simpler than explaining the truth. She doesn't exist in our world anyway." Lex stood frozen, the phone pressed to her ear. Years of similar comments should have made her immune, but somehow each new cut found fresh skin. "Anything else?" Lex finally asked, her voice hollow. Neither woman spoke for a moment. "That's all," Vivian finally said. "Good night, Lennox." The line went dead. Lex slipped the phone back into her pocket and resumed mopping, each stroke harder than necessary. She didn't cry. She hadn't cried over her family in years. Instead, she felt something else, a quiet, smoldering rage that had been building since she was a teenager. She was 29 years old, cleaning floors at night while her younger sister prepared to marry into one of Chicago's wealthiest families. And her own mother would rather tell people she was dead than admit what she did for a living. Lex pushed the mop harder, watching the dirty water spread across the marble floor. They'd always seen her as nothing. Maybe it was time to show them exactly what nothing could do. The next morning, Lex unlocked the door to her cramped apartment on the west side of Chicago. Sunlight filtered through the thin curtains, illuminating the modest space she called home. It wasn't much, but it was hers, paid for with honest work and stubborn determination. She dropped her keys on the counter and glanced at the framed photo she kept there, the only family photo she'd saved. In it, her father, Graham Calloway, stood with his arms around a teenage Lex, both of them smiling after her track meet. She had been 17 then, fast and strong, with scholarship offers already coming in. UCLA had been her dream, and she'd earned it. Lex picked up the frame, running her thumb over her father's face. He'd been the only one who believed in her, who saw past Vivian's obvious favoritism. "You deserved better, Dad," she murmured. The memory came unwanted. Her father collapsed on the kitchen floor, the panicked ride to the hospital, the doctor's grave face as he explained the long road of treatment ahead. Stage 3 cancer. A year, maybe 2, with aggressive treatment. Lex had been in her first semester at UCLA, thriving in her classes, making the track team. Then came the call from Vivian. "Your father needs you," her mother had said. "Ariella has her studies. She can't be interrupted. You need to come home." It wasn't a request. It was an order. Lex put the photo down and walked to her window, looking out at the city awakening. She'd come home, deferred her scholarship, became her father's caretaker while Vivian maintained her social calendar, and Ariella continued her education at Northwestern. For 18 months, Lex had bathed her father, cooked for him, driven him to appointments, held his hand through the worst of the pain. And in the end, she'd been the one sitting beside him when he took his last breath. The day after the funeral, Vivian had sat Lex down at the kitchen table. "Your father left some debts," she'd said, sliding a folder across the table. The medical bills weren't fully covered by insurance. Lex had opened the folder to find a stack of bills, thousands of dollars, all addressed to her. But what about Dad's savings? His pension? Lex had asked. Her father had worked for 30 years at the same company. There should have been something. There was barely enough to cover the funeral, Vivian had said, not meeting Lex's eyes. And what was left goes to household expenses. Ariella's tuition isn't cheap. Later, Lex discovered the truth. Her father's will had named her as a beneficiary alongside Vivian and Ariella. But somehow, when the will was executed, everything had been transferred to Vivian. By the time Lex learned of the deception, it was too late to contest it. She'd tried to rebuild, applied to schools again, only to find her deferred scholarship was no longer available. Applied for jobs, only to be mysteriously rejected after successful interviews. It took years to realize that her mother's influence and the influence of her mother's wealthy friends extended further than she'd imagined. Every door seemed to close in her face. Eventually, she stopped knocking and started cleaning the floors instead. The irony wasn't lost on her. Vivian had spent her life obsessed with class and status, desperately clawing her way up Chicago's social ladder. And now her eldest daughter scrubbed toilets for a living. Lex moved away from the window and began preparing for bed. As she brushed her teeth, she stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror. She had her father's eyes, dark and determined. "They took everything from you," she told her reflection, "but they didn't break you." She spat into the sink and rinsed her mouth. As she crawled into bed, exhaustion pulling at her limbs, her last thought before sleep claimed her was a truth she'd learned the hard way. Family could be the sharpest knife in the back. The sunlight streaming through Lex's blinds woke her at noon. Today was Ariella's wedding day. The knowledge sat like a stone in her stomach. She made coffee and toast, then settled on her couch with a book. She would ignore this day like any other. She refused to waste emotions on people who thought she was better off dead. Her phone rang at 2:17 p.m. Vivian. Lex silenced IT. That IT rang again 3 minutes later. Ariella this time. Lex turned the phone over. BY 2:45. Her phone hadn't stopped ringing. Vivian. Ariella. Even her Aunt Patricia, who hadn't spoken to her in years. Something was wrong. AT 3:02. A text message appeared. "Come now. It's urgent." Mom. Lex stared at the message. Vivian never texted, and she never, ever called herself Mom. It had always been Mother, formal and distant. This wasn't normal. Curiosity won over resentment. Lex got dressed jeans, a clean navy blouse, and the only pair of decent shoes she owned. She pulled her dark hair into a neat ponytail and applied minimal makeup. She wouldn't dress up for them, but she wouldn't give them the satisfaction of looking as beaten down as they'd always treated her. The Harland estate was in Lake Forest, north of the city. Lex took the train, then a bus, the journey eating up over an hour. With each mile, her curiosity grew. What disaster could have befallen the perfect Callaways on their perfect day? The estate came into view as she walked the last half-mile, a sprawling mansion, set back from the road, with manicured gardens and a circular driveway now filled with luxury cars. Security guards stood at the entrance, checking invitations. Lex approached, bracing for rejection. "Name?" asked the guard, not looking up from his list. "Lennox Callaway." His eyes widened slightly. "Ms. Callaway." "Yes, you're expected." He stepped aside. The ceremony was in the garden. "The reception is in the main house." "Expected?" That was new as Lex walked up the driveway. She noticed guests gathered in small clusters, whispering urgently. Many were already leaving, climbing into their cars with expressions ranging from shock to poorly concealed glee. Whatever had happened, it wasn't good. Lex entered the mansion through massive double doors. Inside, the scene was one of elegant chaos. Staff members rushed about, dismantling what should have been a reception in full swing. A half-assembled champagne fountain stood abandoned. Flowers worth thousands of dollars wilted in the afternoon heat at an sign of Ariella or Vivian that a server passed by, carrying a tray of untouched hors d'oeuvres. "Excuse me," Lex said. "I'm looking for the Callaway family." The server nodded toward hallway. "Library. End of the hall. It's not pretty in there." Lex made her way down the hall, the sounds of raised voices growing louder. She recognized her mother's tight with fury and Ariella's, high and breaking with sobs. She paused outside the door, listening. "This is outrageous," Vivian was saying. "After all the expense, all the planning." "Mother, please," Ariella's voice cracked. "Not now." "Yes, now. Do you understand what this means? The humiliation, the waste, your future, thrown away because of his mother's interfering." "Enough." A new voice, female, cool and controlled. "Your daughter lied. My son deserves better." Lex couldn't resist. She pushed the door open. The library was a grand space with dark wood shelves and leather furniture. Ariella sat crumpled in an armchair, still in her wedding gown, mascara streaking her face. Vivian stood beside her, face flushed with anger. Across from them sat an elegant woman in her late 50s, silver-streaked dark hair perfectly styled, expression hard as granite. All three women turned as Lex entered. "You." Vivian's voice dropped to a horrified whisper. "What are you doing here?" Lex stepped into the room, feeling a strange calm settle over her. "You called me, texted me, several times." "I most certainly did not." Vivian snapped. Ariella looked up, her face a mask of misery and shock. "Lex, you came. You wanted me here." Lex kept her voice neutral, though she couldn't help adding, "I thought I was dead." The older woman's eyebrows rose. She studied Lex with sudden interest. "You're her sister?" the woman asked, her voice carrying the same cultured tone as Vivian's, but sharper, more decisive. "Yes." The woman's lips curved into a small, knowing smile. "Interesting. Ariella told us you were in prison for theft." Time seemed to stop. Lex turned slowly to Ariella, whose face had gone from red to ghostly white. "You lied about me." Lex's voice was quiet, but it filled the room. Ariella's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. "She said you stole from your father's estate," the woman continued, watching Lex carefully. "That you disappeared after his death with family heirlooms." A slow, dark fury built in Lex's chest, spreading through her limbs like ice water. The irony was almost laughable. They had stolen from her inheritance, her education, her future, and then told the world she was the thief. "And you are?" Lex asked the woman, though she already knew. Celeste Harland, Damon's mother. Of course, the matriarch of the Harland Empire, known for her ruthless business acumen and her even more ruthless protection of her family's interests. "Mrs. Harland," Lex nodded, "I'm sure you've learned by now that my sister's statement was false." "Oh, yes," Celeste replied, her eyes never leaving Lex's face, "among other falsehoods." "That's enough." Vivian broke in. "Lennox, you need to leave. This is a private family matter." "Aren't I family?" Lex asked, her voice deadly quiet. "Or am I only family when it's convenient for you?" "You know what I mean," Vivian hissed. "This doesn't concern you." "I think it does," Celeste interjected. "In fact, I think your eldest daughter might be the only honest Calloway in the room." Lex felt a strange sensation like standing on the edge of a cliff, knowing that one step would change everything. "What happened here?" she asked. "Why isn't the wedding happening?" Ariella let out a fresh sob. "Because," Celeste said, her voice like silk over steel, "I don't allow my son to marry liars and thieves." Lex stood in the opulent library of the Harland estate, absorbing Celeste's words. Behind her, Ariella's sobs grew louder, more desperate. "What exactly are you accusing them of?" Lex asked, a strange calm settling over her. Celeste Harland straightened in her chair, every inch the business executive she was known to be. "Before any wedding involving the Harland name, we conduct thorough background checks. Standard procedure." "Invasive and unnecessary," Vivian snapped. "As it turns out, quite necessary," Celeste countered smoothly. "Imagine our surprise when we discovered financial discrepancies. Substantial ones." "Mistakes," Vivian waved her hand dismissively. "Clerical errors." "Forgery isn't a clerical error, Mrs. Calloway." Celeste's voice hardened. "Nor is embezzlement." Lex's eyes widened. She looked from Celeste to her mother, then to Ariella, who had curled further into herself, face hidden behind her hands. "I don't understand," Lex said. "Your sister and mother have been living beyond their means for quite some time," Celeste explained. "They've maintained their lifestyle through increasingly creative financial maneuvers." "This is slander." Vivian stood up, hand shaking. "You have no proof." "We have copies of forged documents bearing your signature, transferring funds from your late husband's pension. We have records of charitable donations that mysteriously never reached their destinations. We have evidence of identity theft your daughter used her former roommate's Social Security number to obtain credit." Celeste's eyes flicked to Ariella. "Did I miss anything?" "Stop it," Ariella whispered through her fingers. "Please stop." Lex felt like the room was tilting. Her mother and sister, so obsessed with appearances, so judgmental of her simple life, were frauds, criminals. "When did you discover this?" Lex asked Celeste. "The final report arrived this morning," Celeste replied. "I confronted them an hour before the ceremony." "In front of everyone," Ariella moaned. "Not everyone," Celeste corrected. "Just Damon. He deserved to know what he was marrying into." "And he called off the wedding," Lex concluded. "Immediately," Celeste nodded, "though it was hardly his choice alone. I made it clear that marrying your sister would mean exclusion from the family business and trust fund." Vivian made a strangled noise. "You had no right." "I had every right to protect my son and my family's reputation," Celeste cut in, voice like ice. "And now you have exactly 15 minutes to collect your things and leave this property before I call the police." "The police?" Vivian blanched. "Surely we can discuss this like reasonable adults." 10 years of fraud isn't reasonable, Mrs. Calloway," Celeste stood up. "And the clock is ticking." Lex watched her mother's facade crumble. The proud, status-obsessed woman who had tormented her for years suddenly looked small, frightened. "Ariella," Vivian urged, "get up. We need to go." Ariella remained motionless, face still hidden. "Now, Ariella." Slowly, like a marionette with tangled strings, Ariella rose from the chair. Her wedding dress, a confection of silk and lace that must have cost thousands, was wrinkled, mascara stains visible on the bodice. "All these years," Lex said quietly, "you looked down on me, called me a failure, a disappointment, and all this time you were stealing." Ariella finally met her eyes. "You don't understand. We needed." What did you need that justified theft?" "Fraud." "Our position," Vivian broke in. "Our place in society. After your father died, we had nothing." "We all had nothing," Lex corrected. "The difference is I worked my way up from nothing. Honestly. Cleaning toilets." Vivian sneered, her contempt returning despite her precarious position. "Is that what you call success?" "I call it dignity," Lex replied. "Something you clearly know nothing about." A gleam of respect appeared in Celeste's eyes. She checked her watch. 12 minutes, ladies." Vivian grabbed Ariella's arm and pulled her toward the door. As they passed Lex, Ariella paused. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Lex looked at her sister, this woman who had lied about her, excluded her, betrayed her at every turn. "No," Lex said softly. "You're not sorry you did it. You're sorry you got caught." Ariella flinched, as if struck. Vivian pulled her through the door, and they disappeared down the hallway, the sound of Ariella's sobs fading with distance. Lex remained standing in the center of the library, suddenly aware that she was alone with Celeste Harland. "You're not what I expected," Celeste said, studying Lex with unnerving intensity. "What did you expect?" "Based on your sister's description? A criminal. A failure." Celeste tilted her head. "Instead, I find a woman with clear eyes and a straight spine." "Interesting." Lex wasn't sure how to respond to that. "I should go too." "Not yet." Celeste gestured to the chair Ariella had vacated. "Sit. I have questions." It wasn't a request. "Lex Saturday, how much did you know about your mother's and sister's activities?" Celeste asked. "Nothing," Lex replied honestly. "We barely speak. I knew they lived well above what my father's pension and my mother's occasional work could support, but I assumed they had help from my mother's wealthy friends." "Not entirely incorrect," Celeste nodded. "They did have help in the form of loans they never intended to repay, identity theft, and charity fraud." Lex shook her head, still processing. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you're not like them," Celeste said simply, "and I value honesty, even when it ruins your son's wedding day. Especially then." Celeste's smile was thin. Better heartbreak now than disaster later. A staff member appeared at the door. "Mrs. Harland, Mr. Damon is asking for you." "Tell him I'll be there shortly," Celeste replied, not taking her eyes off Lex. She waited until the staff member left before speaking again. "Your sister and mother are about to experience a significant fall from grace. My discoveries won't remain private for long." "I can't say I'm sorry to hear that," Lex admitted. "No," Celeste said thoughtfully. "I don't imagine you would be." An idea formed in Lex's mind, sudden and terrible and perfect. "Mrs. Harland," she said carefully, "before I go, could I ask you something?" "You may." "Why did you invite me here today? I know it wasn't my mother or sister." Celeste's smile widened fractionally. "Very good. You're observant." "They would never willingly have me here," Lex continued. "So it must have been you. Why?" "Let's call it curiosity," Celeste replied. "I wanted to see the black sheep they tried so hard to hide, the daughter they claimed was dead." She leaned forward slightly. "I find that people who are hidden often have the most interesting stories." Lex met the older woman's gaze. "And what did you think of my story?" "I think," Celeste said slowly, "that you're a woman who has been wronged, and I think you might be interested in making things right." The air between them seemed to thicken with unspoken possibility. "What exactly are you suggesting, Mrs. Harland?" Lex asked. Celeste sat back, a calculating look in her eyes. "Nothing at the moment. But should you wish to continue this conversation in the future, my office is always open to people of integrity." She stood, indicating the meeting was over. Even those who clean floors for a living. As Lex left the Harland estate, the sun was setting over Lake Michigan, painting the sky in fierce oranges and reds. She felt lighter than she had in years, as if something long frozen inside her had finally begun to thaw. Her phone vibrated. A text from an unknown number. "My private line. Use it when you're ready." CH Lex smiled. The game had just begun. 3 days after the wedding disaster. Lex pushed her cleaning cart through the silent halls of Davidson and Wells. It was just past midnight, and she had the 15th floor to herself. As she worked, her mind kept returning to the scene at the Harland estate, replaying Celeste's words, the look on Ariella's face, the way Vivian had crumbled when exposed. She'd spent years believing her mother and sister were better than her, more successful, more worthy. Now she knew the truth. Their success was built on lies, their status bought with stolen money. Lex paused outside the office of James Wells, senior partner. The light was on inside, unusual for this hour. The door stood slightly ajar, voices drifting out. "Absolutely certain?" Wells was saying. "The evidence is irrefutable." A female voice, familiar yet unexpected. "Celeste Harland, Vivian Calloway has been siphoning funds from your client trust accounts for at least 3 years. Small amounts, carefully concealed, but it adds up to nearly $500,000. Lex froze. Her mother worked part-time in the accounting department at Davidson, and Wells a position secured through her social connections. She'd boasted about it endlessly, about how she supervised the finances for one of Chicago's most prestigious firms. "I can't believe it," Wells sounded stunned. "Vivian has been with us for years." "Which is precisely how she got away with it for so long," Celeste replied. "Trust is a dangerous thing when misplaced." "How did you discover this?" Wells asked. "Let's just say I've been conducting a thorough investigation into the Calloway family's finances. When certain patterns emerged, I felt obligated to inform you. The firm owes you a debt of gratitude, Mrs. Harland." "I'm only doing what's right," Celeste said smoothly, "though I would appreciate discretion for now. I'm pursuing several other leads." Lex backed away from the door, heart pounding. Celeste was systematically dismantling her mother's life, exposing frauds, burning bridges, destroying the reputation Vivian had spent decades building. And Lex was thrilled. She continued her cleaning route, moving through the offices with mechanical efficiency while her mind raced. By morning, her mother would be unemployed, possibly facing criminal charges. The social circles she'd fought so hard to enter would slam their doors in her face. IT was perfect. And yet, it wasn't enough. Lex wanted more. She wanted her mother and sister to feel what she had felt: the systematic destruction of every opportunity, every relationship, every hope. She wanted them to know it was coming and be unable to stop it. She wanted them to know it was her. The next evening, Lex dialed the number Celeste had texted her. "Lennox," Celeste answered on the first ring. "I was wondering when I'd hear from you." "I want to meet," Lex said simply. "Tomorrow, 7 a.m., the Blackbird Cafe on Michigan Avenue." The call ended as abruptly as it had begun. The Blackbird Cafe was upscale but discreet, the kind of place where business deals were made over artisanal coffee. Lex arrived at 6:55 a.m., dressed in the best clothes. She owned black slacks and a gray blouse she'd bought for job interviews. Celeste was already there, occupying a corner table with her back to the wall, a position that allowed her to see everyone who entered. She wore a tailored navy suit and a single strand of pearls, her silver-streaked hair pulled back in an elegant knot. She looked like money and power personified. You're punctual, Celeste noted as Lex slid into the seat across from her. I appreciate that. A server appeared instantly. Celeste ordered an espresso. Lex asked for black coffee. I understand you work for Davidson and Wells, Celeste said once the server departed. As a janitor, yes. And before that? Lex hesitated. Odd jobs. Waitressing. Retail. Whatever I could get. With your background, you should have had better options. My background? UCLA scholarship. Top of your high school class. Exceptional athletic performance. Celeste smiled at Lex's surprise. Did you think I wouldn't research you as thoroughly as I did your sister? I'm not that interesting. On the contrary, Celeste took a sip of her espresso. I find you fascinating. A promising young woman who suddenly disappears from university, resurfaces years later in menial jobs far below her capabilities. Why? Lex stared into her coffee. My father got sick. I came home to care for him. Admirable, Celeste nodded. But that doesn't explain what happened after. What do you think happened? I think your mother and sister stole your inheritance and then systematically blocked your attempts to rebuild your life. Lex's head snapped up. How could you possibly know that? Because I understand power, Celeste said simply, and I recognize when it's been abused. She leaned forward. Your mother has cultivated relationships with influential people for decades. A word here, a rumor there, it wouldn't be difficult for her to ensure doors remained closed to you. The server returned, asking if they needed anything else. Celeste waved him away, impatiently. Let me be direct, she continued once they were alone again. Your mother and sister have committed multiple crimes, spanning years. I've begun exposing them, but there's more to uncover. Her eyes locked with Lex's. You know things I don't. You have access they would never suspect. What are you suggesting? Lex asked, though she already knew. A partnership, Celeste replied. You help me complete the destruction of Vivian and Ariella Calloway. In return, I help you build the life they stole from you. Why would you do this? Because they tried to taint my family with their corruption. Celeste's voice hardened. Because they lied to my son. And because I despise people who use power to crush those weaker than themselves. I'm not weak, Lex said sharply. No, Celeste agreed with unexpected warmth. You're not. That's why I'm talking to you instead of simply destroying them myself. Lex considered the woman across from her. Celeste Harland was offering her revenge on a silver platter the chance to tear down the people who had torn her down. It was tempting, darkly, perfectly tempting. What exactly would this partnership entail? Lex asked. Information, Celeste answered. You provide it, I act on it. Your position at the law firm gives you access to garbage, recycling, abandoned notes, the detritus of corporate life that no one thinks about. The things people discard often tell more truth than the things they keep. You want me to dig through trash. I want you to use your invisibility, Celeste corrected. The beauty of your position is that no one sees you. You can go anywhere, look at anything, and no one will notice or care. That's power, Lennox. Lex had never thought of it that way. For years, she'd resented being invisible, being the person nobody saw. Now Celeste was suggesting it could be her greatest asset. And in return, Lex pressed. Access to my network. Connections to rebuild your career, whatever direction you choose. A fresh start on your terms. Why not just hire a private investigator? Celeste smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her severe features. Because this isn't just business for you. It's personal, and personal motivation produces better results than money ever could. Lex took a deep breath. What Celeste was proposing wasn't entirely legal. It would mean becoming something she'd always despised: manipulative, calculating, ruthless. But hadn't those qualities been used against her for years? Hadn't she suffered while playing by rules her mother and sister ignored? Before I agree, Lex said slowly, I need to know something. Yes. What happens to them in the end? Celeste considered the question. That depends on what we find. At minimum, social exile. Loss of status, income, connections. At worst, criminal charges. Prison. She tilted her head. Does that trouble you? Lex thought about years of cruelty, of being excluded, of watching opportunities vanish, while Ariella was given everything. She thought about her father's will, altered to cut her out, about being treated as less than human because she cleaned floors for a living. No, she said finally, it doesn't trouble me at all. Then we have a deal. Celeste extended her hand across the table. Lex took it, feeling the firm grip of a woman accustomed to making life-altering decisions before breakfast. We do, she agreed. I want them to lose everything, just like I did. Then, that's exactly what will happen. Celeste promised. 2 weeks after her meeting with Celeste, Lex found herself in an unfamiliar position, standing in the elevator of the Harland Media Group headquarters, heading to the executive floor. She clutched a small flash drive in her pocket, evidence gathered during late nights at the law firm. The elevator doors opened to reveal a sleek reception area with views of downtown Chicago. The receptionist looked up, her expression neutral but assessing. Lennox Calloway for Mrs. Harland, Lex said, trying to project confidence she didn't entirely feel. Of course. She's expecting you. The woman picked up her phone, spoke briefly, then gestured toward a hallway. Last door on the right. Lex walked the corridor, aware of the quiet hum of power that seemed to permeate the building. This was a different world from the empty offices she cleaned at night here. Decisions were made that affected thousands of lives. Fortunes were built and destroyed between coffee breaks. Celeste's office was spacious, but not ostentatious. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Lake Michigan, the water glittering under the morning sun. Celeste sat behind a glass desk, reading glasses perched on her nose as she reviewed documents. She looked up as Lex entered, removing her glasses with practiced precision. Right on time. I appreciate consistency. I found something, Lex said without preamble, pulling the flash drive from her pocket. Celeste's eyebrow raised fractionally the closest she came to showing surprise. Already? Impressive. The night cleaning crew has access to everything, Lex explained. Nobody thinks twice about someone emptying trash cans or wiping down surfaces. I've been going through the accounting department's recycling, and my mother wasn't just stealing from client accounts. Lex placed the flash drive on the desk. She was falsifying tax documents for the firm's partners, skimming from their personal accounts while making it look like they'd paid more in taxes than they actually had. Celeste picked up the flash drive, turning it over in her fingers. I assume you have proof. Copies of altered documents, original drafts she thought she'd destroyed, spreadsheets tracking the real numbers versus the reported ones. This could implicate the partners as well, Celeste noted. Some of them were knowing participants, Lex confirmed. Others were victims. My mother kept detailed records, probably as insurance. A slow smile spread across Celeste's face. Insurance that will now work against her. Perfect. She slipped the flash drive into her computer. What else have you discovered? Ariella has been running a fake charity, Lex continued. The Chicago Youth Arts Initiative. It exists on paper, has a website, collects donations, but the money goes straight into accounts she controls. I've heard of that organization, Celeste frowned. She's been holding fundraisers in my social circle. It's her biggest scam, Lex confirmed. She's collected hundreds of thousands of dollars from people who think they're supporting arts programs in underprivileged schools, while the only underprivileged person she was helping was herself, Celeste finished, disgust evident in her tone. She skimmed through the files on the drive, nodding occasionally. This is excellent work, Lennox. I'm just getting started, Lex replied. I can see that. Celeste sat back, studying Lex with newfound respect. You're wasted emptying trash cans. I do what I need to do to survive. For now, Celeste agreed. But survival isn't enough, is it? Not after what they've done to you. Lex hesitated. What exactly are you planning to do with this information? That depends on you, Celeste replied. How much damage do you want to inflict? The question hung in the air between them. Lex had asked herself the same thing many times over the past 2 weeks. How far was she willing to go? Where was the line between justice and vengeance? I want them to lose everything, Lex finally said, just like I did. Their money, their reputation, their future. I want them to know what it feels like to have no options left. Then, that's what we'll do, Celeste nodded. I'll handle the financial and legal aspects, ensure the right authorities are informed, the right questions are asked by the right people. And what do you want me to do? Continue what you've been doing. Gather more evidence. But also, Celeste paused, choosing her words carefully. Begin creating a new life for yourself. You won't be a janitor forever. I don't know how to do anything else anymore, Lex admitted, the confession difficult. Nonsense. Celeste dismissed the comment with a wave. You were a scholar once, an athlete. Those capabilities don't vanish, they remain dormant until needed. She opened a drawer and removed a business card, sliding it across the desk. Call this person. Tell them I sent you. Lex picked up the card. Gregory Chen, executive recruiter. I don't understand. It's simple, Celeste said. We're not just destroying your mother and sister's lives. We're rebuilding yours. Think of it as killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Why would you do this for me? I told you I despise people who abuse power. Celeste's eyes hardened. Your mother and sister took advantage of your father's illness to steal your future. They manipulated the system to keep you down. That offends me. Lex studied the older woman's face, searching for deception. Is that the only reason? A ghost of a smile touched Celeste's lips. Let's just say I recognize potential when I see it. You're resourceful, intelligent, and clearly not afraid of hard work. Those qualities are rare. Something unspoken passed between them, a recognition that this alliance went beyond simple revenge. Celeste saw something in Lex, something worth investing in. Now, Celeste continued, all business again. I suggest we proceed as follows. She outlined her plan, each step designed to further isolate and expose Vivian and Ariella as Lex listened. She felt an unfamiliar warmth spreading through her chest. For years, she'd been alone, fighting a battle she couldn't win against enemies with too much power. Now she had an ally, perhaps the most formidable ally in Chicago. You seem like a woman who appreciates revenge, Lex said when Celeste finished explaining. I prefer to call it justice, Celeste replied with a thin smile. But yes, when necessary, I can be thorough in settling scores. Good, Lex nodded. Because I want them to suffer, not physically, but in every other way possible. Then we understand each other perfectly. Celeste extended her hand across the desk. Partners. Lex took the offered hand without hesitation. Partners. As she left the Harlan building, stepping into the bright spring sunshine, Lex felt a strange sense of lightness. For the first time in years, she wasn't just surviving, she was fighting back, and this time she would win. Over the next 3 months, Lex settled into a new routine. By day, she met with Gregory Chen, who helped her refresh her resume, practice interview skills, and connect with potential employers willing to overlook her spotty work history. By night, she continued her janitorial work, but with a new purpose, gathering evidence, finding patterns, connecting dots. The invisibility that had once been her burden became her greatest weapon. No one noticed a cleaning woman. No one censored conversations when she was in the room. No one locked drawers or closed laptop screens when she passed by. She was a ghost moving through their world, absorbing secrets, collecting discarded notes, photographing documents left carelessly on desks. Each discovery was another nail in her mother's and sister's coffins. One Tuesday evening, Lex pushed her cart into the executive washroom on the 12th floor of Davidson and Wells. Two senior partners stood at the sinks, deep in conversation, not even glancing her way as she began cleaning the stalls. "Can't believe Vivian was fired," one was saying. "She's been with the firm for what, 8 years?" "Terminated with cause," the other replied. "Word is she was cooking the books, skimming from client trust accounts." "Jesus. Criminal charges?" "Not yet, but the forensic accountants are tearing through everything. It doesn't look good." The first partner lowered his voice. "Heard her daughter's wedding got called off too. The Harlan boy." "Not surprised. That family wouldn't touch a scandal with a 10-foot pole. Ruthless bunch, the Harlans." They finished washing up and left, never acknowledging Lex's presence. She smiled to herself as she wiped down the counters. Phase 1 of their plan was working perfectly. That night after work, Lex met Celeste at a small French restaurant in the Gold Coast neighborhood. They'd taken to meeting weekly, always in upscale establishments where Vivian had once sought acceptance, but would now never be welcome again. "The IRS has opened a formal investigation," Celeste reported as they sipped wine. "And not just into the firm's accounts. They're looking at your mother's personal finances as well." "How long until charges are filed?" Lex asked. "Hard to say. These investigations can drag on." Celeste cut into her steak with surgical precision. "But we don't need formal charges to continue our work. The whispers alone are enough to damage her standing. And Ariella." The Chicago Tribune received an anonymous tip about her charity scam. Celeste's smile was cold. "Their investigative team is digging in. I expect a feature article within weeks." Lex nodded, satisfaction warming her better than the wine. "Good. You've made progress as well, I hear." Celeste changed the subject. "Gregory tells me you have several promising interviews lined up." 3 next week, Lex confirmed. "Finance positions. Nothing executive level, but better than cleaning toilets." "Everyone starts somewhere," Celeste said. "Even I began as an assistant." The revelation surprised Lex. Somehow she'd imagined Celeste springing into existence, fully formed, already powerful. "Really? My first job paid $13,000 a year." Celeste nodded. "I answered phones, made coffee, took meeting notes. But I watched. I learned. I made myself invaluable." She sipped her wine. "Within 5 years, I was running the department." "That's impressive." "It's persistence," Celeste corrected. "Something you clearly possess." Lex looked down at her plate, uncertain how to respond to the compliment. "Tell me," Celeste continued, "have you seen or spoken to your mother or sister since the wedding?" "No," Lex shook her head. "But I've heard things. Mother lost her country club membership. Ariella was dropped from the charity board she sat on." "Small beginnings," Celeste promised. "It will get worse." 2 days later, Lex received a text from an unknown number. "We need to talk." "Please, Ariella." She showed it to Celeste during their next meeting. "Interesting timing," Celeste mused. "The Tribune article is scheduled to run on Sunday. What should I do?" Lex asked. "Meet her," Celeste suggested. "See what she wants. It might provide useful information. And if she suspects I'm involved—" "She won't," Celeste assured her. "Your mother and sister have spent years underestimating you. They won't stop now." Lex agreed to meet Ariella at a coffee shop downtown Neutral Territory, public enough to discourage scenes. She arrived early, selecting a table with a clear view of the entrance. Ariella walked in 10 minutes late, and Lex barely recognized her. Gone was the polished socialite with designer clothes and perfect makeup. This woman looked haggard, with dark circles under her eyes and hair pulled back in a hasty ponytail. Her clothes, while still expensive, looked rumpled as if she'd slept in them. "Lex," Ariella said, sliding into the chair across from her. "Thank you for coming." "What do you want, Ariella?" Lex kept her voice neutral, betraying none of the satisfaction she felt at her sister's diminished appearance. "I need help," Ariella admitted, voice barely above a whisper. "Everything's falling apart. Mother lost her job. Our accounts are frozen. The condo association is threatening eviction over unpaid fees." "That sounds difficult," Lex observed, taking a sip of her coffee. "Why come to me?" Ariella looked up, eyes watery. "Because your family. You're all we have left." The audacity was breathtaking. After years of exclusion and cruelty, Ariella dared invoke family bonds when it suited her needs. "Family," Lex repeated, the word bitter on her tongue. "Interesting that you remember that now." "I know I've been terrible to you," Ariella said, reaching across the table. Lex pulled her hand away before Ariella could touch it. "I deserve your anger. But please, if you could just loan us enough to get through the next month." "Loan you money?" Lex cut her off. "Me. The janitor." Ariella flushed. "I know how it sounds." "Do you? Do you really?" Lex leaned forward. "For years, you and Mother treated me like garbage. Excluded me. Lied about me. And now you want my help." I said I was sorry. "Sorry isn't enough," Lex replied, her voice deadly quiet. "Not even close." "What do you want from me?" Ariella asked, desperation creeping into her tone. "I'll do anything. Please, Lex. We're going to lose everything." Something dark and satisfied uncurled in Lex's chest. "How terrible for you." Ariella stared at her, realization dawning in her eyes. You're enjoying this." "Why wouldn't I?" Lex asked simply. "You're finally getting what you deserve. This isn't just bad luck, is it?" Ariella's voice hardened. "You're involved somehow." Lex smiled, neither confirming nor denying. "I should go. My break is almost over." As she stood, Ariella grabbed her wrist. "Wait. Whatever you're doing, please stop. Mother can't handle much more. Her health." "Don't." Lex pulled her arm free. "Don't you dare try to manipulate me with concern for Mother. Not after everything. She's still our mother." "She stopped being my mother the day she told people I was dead because she was ashamed of me," Lex replied. "Goodbye, Ariella." She walked out of the coffee shop, Ariella's pleas following her into the street. Instead of guilt, she felt only a grim satisfaction. The tables had finally turned that evening. Lex called Celeste to report on the meeting. "They're desperate," she concluded. "Exactly as we planned." "Perfect," Celeste replied. "And it's about to get worse. I've arranged for your mother's involvement in the tax fraud to reach certain government officials tomorrow." "What will happen?" "At minimum, heavy fines. Possibly criminal charges." Celeste's voice was calm, matter-of-fact. "Either way, her reputation will be beyond salvaging." Lex thought about her mother-proud, status-obsessed Vivian facing public humiliation, perhaps even prison. She waited for a twinge of guilt, a moment of doubt that IT never came. "Good," she said simply. "What's next?" The Chicago Tribune's Sunday edition featured a front-page exposé on charity fraud in the city's elite circles. Ariella's name appeared 11 times, her photograph prominently displayed beneath the damning headline. Socialites' fake charity scam exposed. Millions meant for underprivileged children diverted to personal use. The article detailed years of deception, fabricated financial reports, non-existent programs, lavish personal expenses disguised as operational costs. Quotes from duped donors expressed outrage and betrayal. A sidebar listed the charity's board of directors, all of whom denied knowledge of the fraud while distancing themselves from Ariella, Lex read the article 3 times, savoring every word. She'd provided much of the evidence herself, financial documents retrieved from Ariella's recycling, emails printed and then discarded, notes from planning meetings that outlined the scheme in Ariella's own handwriting. Her phone rang. "Celeste." "Have you seen it?" the older woman asked without preamble. "Every word," Lex confirmed. "The prosecutor's office has opened a formal investigation," Celeste reported. "The FBI may become involved, given the interstate nature of some donations." "Will she go to prison?" "Hard to say at this stage. But at minimum, she faces civil penalties, possible criminal charges, and complete social exile." Celeste's satisfaction was evident even through the phone. No one will touch her now, not socially, not professionally. For a moment, neither woman spoke, both contemplating the devastation they'd engineered. "How does it feel?" Celeste finally asked. Lex considered the question. "Right," she decided. "It feels right." The following week brought more developments. Vivian received official notice that she was under investigation for tax fraud, embezzlement, and financial elder abuse related to the handling of Graham Calloway's estate. Her accounts were frozen. Her passport was confiscated. Lex learned these details not from news reports or gossip, but from the source itself. Vivian called her on a Tuesday evening, voice brittle with barely controlled panic. "Lennox," she said when Lex answered, "I need to see you." "Why?" Lex asked, making no effort to hide her disinterest. "Because I'm your mother," Vivian snapped, then seemed to catch herself. Her tone softened to something Lex had never heard before, pleading. "Please, I have nowhere else to turn." Curiosity won out. Lex agreed to meet her at a diner near her apartment, not the upscale establishments Vivian preferred, but the only place Lex was willing to be seen with her. Vivian arrived looking like a ghost of her former self. Her designer clothes hung loosely on her frame. Her makeup couldn't hide the hollows beneath her eyes, and her hands trembled as she clutched her purse. "Thank you for coming," she said as she slid into the booth across from Lex. "What do you want, Mother?" Lex asked, not bothering with pleasantries. Vivian's eyes darted around the diner, as if searching for eavesdroppers. "I'm in trouble, Lennox. Serious trouble." "I've heard," Lex replied coolly. "Tax fraud, embezzlement, quite the list." "It's all a misunderstanding," Vivian insisted, though her eyes betrayed the lie. "Mistakes in accounting, that's all. But the lawyers, the investigators, they're making it into something criminal." "And it wasn't criminal." Lex raised an eyebrow. "Taking money that wasn't yours? Falsifying documents." Vivian's face hardened momentarily before crumpling into desperation again. "You don't understand. After your father died, we had nothing. The medical bills, the mortgage, I did what I had to do to keep us afloat." "Us," Lex repeated. "Or you and Ariella." "All of us," Vivian insisted. "Everything I did was for this family. Except I wasn't part of your family, was I?" Lex's voice was quiet but cutting. "Not when you stole my inheritance. Not when you blocked my attempts to rebuild my life. Not when you told society I was dead because you were ashamed of me." Vivian paled. "Who told you that?" "Does it matter? It's true, isn't it?" For once, Vivian didn't deny it. She looked down at her hands, twisting a ring nervously. "I made mistakes. I admit that. But surely you don't want to see your own mother in prison." The question hung between them. Did Lex want that? She'd imagined her mother's downfall for months, worked actively to bring it about. But the reality of Vivian behind bars, broken and humiliated, was different from the abstract idea. "What exactly are you asking me for?" Lex finally said. "Money," Vivian admitted. "For lawyers. The good ones won't touch my case without a retainer, and my accounts are frozen. You want me to pay for your defense." Lex couldn't keep the incredulity from her voice. "With what?" "My janitorial salary." I know you must have something saved, Vivian persisted. And this affects you too. The Calloway name means nothing to me, Lex cut her off. You made sure of that years ago. Vivian's facade finally cracked. Please, Lennox. I'm begging you. I'm your mother. No, Lex said softly. You stopped being my mother the day Dad died, and you decided Ariella was your only child worth investing in. That's not fair. None of this has been fair. Lex stood up, retrieving her jacket from the seat beside her. You made your choices, Mother. Now you can live with the consequences. Lennox, wait. Vivian reached across the table, genuine fear in her eyes. I don't know what to do. Everything's gone: my job, my friends, my reputation. Even the country club cancelled my membership. How terrible for you. Lex echoed the words she'd used with Ariella. Now you know how it feels to have nothing, to be nothing. She turned and walked out of the diner, ignoring Vivian's calls behind her. Outside, the evening air felt clean, purifying. She took a deep breath, savoring the moment. Her phone buzzed with a text from Celeste. Dinner tomorrow? Good news to share. The good news, as it turned out, was multifaceted. Over filet mignon at Gibson's, Celeste laid it out with precise satisfaction. The Harlan Media Group is purchasing the building where your mother and sister's condo is located, she explained. We're converting the units to corporate housing. All current leases will be terminated within 30 days. They'll be evicted, Lex realized. Precisely, Celeste nodded. Additionally, I've spoken with several of my contacts in real estate. Finding new housing may prove challenging for individuals under financial investigation, so they'll have nowhere to go. Options will be limited, Celeste agreed. But that's not all. The prosecutor's office has scheduled Ariella's arraignment for next week. The charges include wire fraud, mail fraud, and money laundering. Bail, if granted, will be substantial. Lex absorbed this information, imagining Ariella in court, facing a judge, possibly heading to jail. And there's more, Celeste continued, reaching into her purse. She withdrew an envelope and slid it across the table. For you. Lex opened it to find a formal job offer on Harlan Media Group, letterhead Assistant Financial Controller, with a salary that made her eyes widen. I don't understand, she said, looking up from the letter. I'm not qualified for this. You have a background in mathematics, a sharp analytical mind, and 3 months of intensive training with Gregory Chin, Celeste countered. More importantly, you have something many qualified candidates lack: integrity. This is generous, Lex managed, still stunned by the offer. It's business, Celeste corrected. I recognize talent. I invest in it. She sipped her wine. Besides, our arrangement was clear. You help me destroy your mother and sister. I help you rebuild your life. I keep my promises. Lex studied the offer letter again, reality sinking in. This was it her way out of janitorial work, back into the professional world her mother and sister had barred her from for years. When would I start? She asked. Monday, Celeste replied, if that works for you. It's perfect, Lex said, a genuine smile breaking across her face. Thank you. Don't thank me. Celeste waved a hand dismissively. You earned this. Now, she leaned forward, eyes gleaming with purpose. Shall we discuss the final phase of our plan? As Celeste outlined the last steps in Vivian and Ariella's destruction, Lex listened with growing satisfaction. The women who had ruined her life were finally getting everything they deserved, and she was just getting started. 3 months into her new position at Harlan Media Group, Lex barely recognized her own life. She had an office with a view, colleagues who respected her opinions, work that challenged her intellect. She'd moved to a better apartment in a safer neighborhood. She'd even started dating again cautiously, but with genuine interest rather than the bone-deep exhaustion that had characterized her previous relationships, all while watching her mother and sister's lives disintegrate completely. Ariella had been indicted on 14 counts of fraud. Released on bail paid by selling her engagement ring and designer wardrobe, she awaited trial under house arrest. The house in question was a studio apartment in a neighborhood Vivian would once have refused to drive through. Vivian herself faced both criminal charges and civil lawsuits. Former friends and colleagues had turned on her, eager to distance themselves from her disgrace. She'd been forced to surrender her passport and report weekly to a probation officer as conditions of her pretrial release. The Calloway name, once whispered with respect in certain circles, was now synonymous with fraud and deception. It was everything Lex had wanted, everything she'd worked for with Celeste. And yet, something felt unfinished. "You seem distracted today," Celeste observed during their weekly lunch meeting. They still kept their standing appointment, though their discussions had evolved from revenge to business strategy and Lex's professional development. "I was thinking about my mother and sister," Lex admitted, having second thoughts. Celeste's tone sharpened slightly. "No," Lex shook her head. "Not at all. I just feel like there's something missing. One final piece." Celeste studied her, head tilted slightly. "Closure," she suggested. "You want to look them in the eye. Make sure they know." "Know what?" "That it was you," Celeste said simply. "That you orchestrated their downfall." Lex considered this. Was that what she wanted? For Vivian and Ariella to understand that their own discarded daughter, their own despised sister, had been the architect of their destruction? Yes, she realized. That's exactly what I want. "Then take it," Celeste advised. "You've earned that much." The foreclosure notice for the Calloway mansion arrived the following week. Lex intercepted it through her connections at the bank, another advantage of her position at Harland Media Group. She knew that Vivian and Ariella had moved back to the family home after being evicted from their condo, a last-ditch effort to maintain some semblance of their former lifestyle. Now they would lose even that. Lex chose a Sunday afternoon to visit. She drove herself, enjoying the irony of pulling up to the mansion's circular driveway in a car nicer than anything Vivian had ever owned. The property already showed signs of neglect: uncut grass, empty flower beds, a general air of abandonment that matched its owner's fall from grace. She rang the doorbell, hearing it echo through the house. Footsteps approached, hesitant and slow. Ariella opened the door, freezing when she saw Lex. "What are you doing here?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. "I need to speak with you and Mother," Lex replied calmly. "May I come in?" Ariella hesitated, then stepped back, allowing Lex to enter the once grand foyer. The house felt different, colder, emptier. Many of the antiques and artwork that had adorned the walls were missing, likely sold to pay legal fees or basic living expenses. "Mother's in the sunroom," Ariella said, leading the way. Vivian sat in a faded armchair, staring out at the overgrown garden. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. Her hair, once meticulously colored and styled, showed streaks of gray. She turned as they entered, eyes widening at the sight of Lex. "Lennox," she said, straightening slightly. "What a surprise." "Mother," Lex nodded, taking a seat on the sofa opposite her. Ariella hovered uncertainly before perching on the arm of Vivian's chair, the two of them unconsciously forming a united front. "What brings you here?" Vivian asked, attempting to project her old authority and failing. "We haven't heard from you in months." "I wanted to see how you were doing," Lex replied, glancing around the room. "Things seem different." "If you've come to gloat," Ariella began, but Vivian cut her off with a sharp look. "We're managing," Vivian said stiffly. "These allegations will be sorted out eventually." "Allegations," Lex repeated. "Is that what you call 14 counts of fraud? Tax evasion? Embezzlement?" A flush crept up Vivian's neck. "We don't need to discuss that with you." "Actually," Lex leaned forward, "that's exactly why I'm here." Something in her tone made both women tense. "What do you mean?" Ariella asked. "I mean that I know everything," Lex said simply. The fake charity, the stolen client funds, the tax fraud, Dad, so that you altered to cut me out. Everything. Vivian's face hardened. If you came here to make accusations. Not accusations, Lex corrected. Facts. Facts that I personally uncovered and delivered to the right people. A heavy silence filled the room as her words sank in. You, Ariella whispered, shock evident in her voice. You did this to us. With help, Lex acknowledged. Celeste Harland proved to be an excellent partner. Celeste Harland, Vivian repeated, face paling. You've been working with her? Against your own family? My own family, Lex let out a short, bitter laugh. When was I ever truly part of this family, Mother? When you forced me to drop out of college. When you stole my inheritance. When you told society I was dead because you were ashamed of my job. Neither woman answered. You took everything from me, Lex continued, her voice steady despite the emotion building in her chest. My education, my opportunities, my future. You made sure every door was closed to me. We never, Ariella started. Don't lie, Lex cut her off. Not now. Not anymore. I have proof. Emails. Phone records. Evidence of both of you sabotaging job interviews, spreading rumors, blocking my applications. Vivian's face had gone from pale to ashen. How did you find all this? I was invisible, Lex explained. The janitor no one notices. The daughter no one acknowledges. It makes it remarkably easy to dig through trash, access files, overhear conversations. So this is revenge, Vivian said flatly. Justice, Lex corrected, echoing Celeste's words from months ago. You're finally facing consequences for your actions. Both of you. Ariella stood up suddenly. You've ruined our lives. No, Lex shook her head. You ruined your own lives with your greed and dishonesty. I just made sure you couldn't escape the fallout. She reached into her purse and withdrew an envelope, placing it on the coffee table between them. What's that? Vivian asked, eyeing it suspiciously. Foreclosure notice, Lex replied. The bank is taking the house. You have 30 days to vacate. Vivian's hand flew to her mouth. No, that's impossible. I made arrangements. Those arrangements have been cancelled, Lex informed her. Your last opportunity to negotiate terms expired yesterday. Where are we supposed to go? Ariella asked, voice rising with panic. I'm under house arrest. I can't leave the county. All our friends have abandoned us. We have nothing left. Now you know how it feels, Lex said quietly. To have nothing. To be nothing. She stood up, smoothing her skirt. I should go. I have dinner plans. Wait, Vivian reached out, desperation replacing pride. Lennox, please. We're still your family. Whatever we did. Stop, Lex held up a hand. Don't insult us both by pretending to care now. It's too late. What do you want from us? Ariella asked, tears streaming down her face. Haven't you done enough? Lex looked at her sister, once beautiful and confident, now broken and afraid. She looked at her mother, once proud and imperious, now diminished and desperate. You win, Ariella whispered. Are you happy? Lex considered the question. Was she happy? Not exactly. But she felt something else, a sense of completion, of balance restored, of a debt finally paid in full. She leaned in close to Ariella. You took everything from me. You thought I'd disappear. But now you're the one who's nothing. Ariella stared at her, waiting for mercy, for some softening, some hint that Lex might relent. Lex gave.